Tonight, a new rail blockade, this one disrupting GO train service along the lakeshore line.
We need to spread awareness because not everybody knows about this, but it affects not even just the Indigenous community, it affects all of you, it affects all of us.
A delay for commuters taking the GO train this evening as anti-pipeline protests suspend GO train service between Aldershot and Hamilton. And
she had blood on her and you could see blood coming off of her sleeve.
A woman is dead after a triple stabbing at a massage parlor. The main suspect found bleeding outside. Plus,
I always said that you would get where you are today. It's amazing.
Whitby's David Ayers is getting the celebrity treatment. We'll tell you what's next for the NHL's most famous backup goalie. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. Metrolinx is canceling several GO trains tomorrow because of a new rail blockade on the Lakeshore West line tonight. It stops service west of Aldershot Station, disrupting service into Hamilton. The protesters there say they are not going anywhere.
They're standing with Wet'suwet'en, so until our CMP, until that they're actually cleared off Wet'suwet'en land, because they're not actually off Wet'suwet'en land, that is a lie. They'll continue to stand here in Hamilton.
A Metrolinx spokesperson says because of the disruption, there will be no service to or from the Hamilton, the West Harbour, the St. Catharines, or the Niagara GO train stations tomorrow. GO buses will run instead, connecting at Aldershot Station. Tonight's protest is connected to another blockade by Indigenous protesters on Highway 6 in Caledonia, close to the Six Nations Reserve. And of course, those protests are in response to the OPP moving to end the blockades by Indigenous protesters on a rail line near Belleville. This evening, the first CN rail train rolled through Tyendinaga. Now, in response to that, some Mohawk protesters threw burning tires on the tracks. Earlier today, police held the media back while they moved to clear the blockade, eventually arresting 10 people, each of them now facing multiple charges. Other protesters remain on the scene, but police have taken control of the site and have been removing elements of the blockade, including that snowplow at the center of the protest site. CN rail crews have also been there all day, inspecting the tracks and testing equipment. The protest is in support of the Wet'suwet'en in BC, trying to stop the construction of a gas pipeline on their land. The blockade shut down rail service across eastern Canada for almost 3 weeks. Here in Toronto, a woman died this afternoon after a triple stabbing in an erotic massage parlor near Dufferin and Wilson. Police say one of the victims, a man stabbed in the attack, is also their main suspect. Ramna Shahzad has more.
She had blood on her and you could see blood coming off of her sleeve.
Witnesses describe a chaotic scene right in the middle of the day. At 12:30 this afternoon, Toronto police rushed to a plaza in North York where they found 2 women and a man with stab wounds at this business, Crown Spa.
We're here very quickly. They dealt with the gentleman outside who was injured and the female, and then went inside. They found a female inside. Paramedics arrived on scene to assess that female, and unfortunately that female, her injuries were so serious that she was actually pronounced here at the scene.
Paramedics took the other woman to hospital with serious injuries. The man in his late teens was found lying on the ground outside with a weapon near him. He was taken into surgery in life-threatening condition. Police say at this time he is being treated as a suspect. The website for Crown Spa says it offers erotic massages. It is licensed by the City of Toronto as a body rub parlor. Elizabeth De Gregorio works nearby. She says though the neighborhood is safe, she isn't shocked by the violence at the massage parlor.
It used to be called the Mink Spa, and then they got busted years ago with underage women in there, and then they turned it into the Crown Spa, and it's been open for a couple of years now, and you don't really see much going on, especially during the day, but we know what it is. To see something coming out of there, I'm not surprised at all. It's not a good place there. It's really not.
Toronto police haven't said how the victims are connected. They say this wasn't a random attack, and there is no threat to public safety. The Homicide Squad and Major Crime Unit with 32 Division have taken over the investigation. Police are canvassing the area for video and appealing for witnesses. Anybody with information is asked to contact police. Ramna Shahzad, CBC News, Toronto.
Contract negotiations continue this week, aimed at avoiding a strike or a lockout that could disrupt garbage collection for half of the city.
We're not looking to strike. The city is going to push this conflict. I am staying at that table. My bargaining committee is staying at that table to come with a resolution. If there's a stoppage, it's because the city wants one.
If no deal is reached, a lockout or job action could begin at 12:01 Thursday morning. CUPE Local 416, which represents about 5,000 outside workers, says it didn't choose to impose the deadline. The city did, and says the main sticking point at the negotiation table is job security. Mayor Tory says the city is working with the union to find a fair deal for all parties involved, and that it wants to resolve things before any major stoppages happen. And it looks like contract talks have stalled between the province and the union representing Catholic teachers. The head of OECTA says her union will consider further strike options while it waits to hear from a mediator about future talks. Meanwhile, high school teachers will resume strikes later this week, with one-day strikes affecting schools in Hamilton and Durham on Friday. But when it comes to public elementary teachers, their union says for the next 2 weeks, there won't be any walkouts.
If there is no agreement over the next 2 weeks that meets our priorities and invests in public education, elementary educators across Ontario, we will, without hesitation, initiate further strike action.
The union isn't ruling out the possibility of moving to a full strike come March 6th. Now, over the next 2 weeks, EDFO members will be focusing on political pressure and mobilizing support. Starting Wednesday, EDFO teachers will picket outside their schools for at least 20 minutes a day, once a week. The teachers are also ramping up their Work to Rule campaign by not covering a class for an absent colleague if a supply teacher can't be found. Nick Cernkovich is here with his first look at the forecast. You know, Nick, these last few days have made me almost forget about winter.
I know, we've been spoiled, haven't we? I'm telling you, we hit 9 degrees today. The record for today was about 11.8, so we're not a record, but we're pretty close and well above the seasonal mark. The seasonal mark for this time of year, close to about 0. There's a look at daytime highs across southern Ontario. Toronto, actually, one of the warmest places in the region, but all of this is changing. Special weather statements in effect. That's snow, by the way. Upwards to 15 centimeters of snow possible with the system that's approaching the GTA. We'll sort of tap into a little bit of it tonight, but it's really not until Wednesday where we see the bulk of this system moving into the GTA. For tonight, your forecast looks like this. 0 degrees. Again, a few flurries. Could slick up the roads a bit for tomorrow morning. Clears out for the afternoon, and then we're into the snow for tomorrow night. Full details in just a bit.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
Bye.
Ontario health officials are keeping tabs on the province's newest confirmed case of COVID-19. It's the 4th case in the province since the outbreak began late last year. Now, while health officials here say the process is in place to manage the spread of the coronavirus is working well, concern is growing about the spread of the virus in other countries. Farah Morali has more.
More than 3 weeks after the last confirmed case, news of another COVID-19 patient in Ontario.
It was on February 21st that we had an adult woman, a woman in her 20s, who arrived in Canada after having traveled in China.
Health officials say the woman went to hospital immedately and is now recovering in isolation at home.
This was an individual who was clearly aware of their symptoms and their travel history. Very, very limited contact. Again, it's a small household, not a very big household. And the main source of exposure was with a family member.
Here's what the latest numbers look like for COVID-19. There are now more than 77,000 cases in China. More than 2,600 people have died, and 150 of those deaths happened just in the past 24 hours. Here in Ontario, there's now this new presumptive case, but 3 others have been resolved. 9 are under investigation, and more than 500 have been found to be negative.
I think it's very important to note that the whole process that has been followed from start to finish here shows that, in fact, that the system is working quite well to keep people safe.
While efforts to contain the virus have been successful here, elsewhere, it's a different story. There's been a sharp rise in cases reported in other countries like Iran, Italy, and South Korea.
Does this virus have pandemic potential? Absolutely, it has. Are we there yet? From our assessment, not yet.
The World Health Organization did not declare COVID-19 a pandemic today, and instead emphasized the importance of containment.
What we see are epidemics in different parts of the world, affecting countries in different ways and requiring a tailored response. The sudden increase in new cases is certainly very concerning.
We can all see what direction this is heading in, and if we're not going to use the P word today, we very well might start to use it in the coming days.
Experts say governments need to be ready to ramp up screening and testing.
They still said that the world should be prepared for an onslaught of cases and to be prepared for a pandemic. So they are telling everyone to, basically buckle up and get ready for this.
Tonight, researchers and experts gathered here at the Dalla Lana Faculty of Public Health at the University of Toronto to talk about prevention and treatment of COVID-19. A question on many people's minds tonight is whether airports and other ports of entry will be considering ramping up screening for passengers coming from places other than China. We did reach out to Health Canada for comment on that and are still waiting for a response. Farah Morali, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, a stroke at 27 years old was just the beginning. This man has recovered enough to move out of the hospital, but there's one big problem. He has nowhere to move to. Coming up next, the hunt to find not just something affordable, but also accessible. A 27-year-old man who suffered a stroke last summer says he's now learning just how tough Toronto's housing market can be. After months in the healthcare system, Patrick Kunkel is finally well enough to trade a hospital bed for one at home. But his family is struggling to find an accessible, affordable house. Lauren Pelly explains.
Finish the right step, all the way. That's it, there you go.
Relearning how to walk is just one piece of Patrick Kunkel's physiotherapy.
Good, almost there, a couple more.
Last summer, he suffered a massive stroke at the age of 27, and he's been living in different healthcare facilities ever since. First in the intensive care unit at St. Michael's Hospital, and for the last few months here at the Toronto Rehabilitation Institute. His discharge date came and went in January.
All right, now lean into me.
Patrick's sister and mother have supported him through his long recovery.
Hard. Really hard. You learn how to walk again? Basic things like moving your hand and like moving your arm in certain directions. It's like to feed himself, to even just like, I remember when you couldn't scratch your nose. Like, it's crazy.
Patrick is now healthy enough to move on, but his family says there's no place to move to. Amid the city's housing crunch, they're struggling to find him a new apartment that's both affordable and wheelchair accessible.
So it really puts people in a very precarious position when something like, when a tragedy like this happens to a family, and in a city like Toronto where we don't have options for affordable housing. It's very stressful.
That kind of housing just is very hard to find.
The hospital's medical director says it's a common concern for patients and families.
Individuals who have these very complicated situations where they need accessible housing, supportive housing, then we really can't manufacture that from nowhere. It's got to be really a hard time for us to get them home.
In Patrick's case, he'll be getting $1,200 a month in Ontario disability income. Experts say the average one-bedroom apartment goes for more than $2,000.
You need an accessible place. Not every place in Toronto has been built to be accessible. And those that have are often gobbled up because there's such a high need.
This tenant advocate says those residents face some of the biggest challenges.
Right now, they end up leaving the city. Unfortunately, we're in an affordability crisis. Rents are skyrocketing.
The Kunkel family wants to stay close to each other in Toronto. Patrick is now heading to a long-term care facility, but his family remains hopeful he'll find a new home, with his sister planning to move in as his primary caregiver.
I'm able-bodied, and luckily my schedule is pretty flexible. It's going to be really difficult. Financially, I have no idea how this is going to work because the city is just not housing is not accessible. A lot of buildings are not accessible.
That uncertainty is a constant.
Just not knowing really is pretty terrifying. And I can imagine that it's the same for Patrick.
Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
Today was Safe City Day here in Toronto, a day to promote the importance of learning CPR. Mayor John Tory took in a few lessons himself.
So you're going to continue CPR right on top of the pad. That's right, right on top, right where the X is, and off you go. And that's the speed you want to go at.
Safe City Day aims to teach Torontonians how to use life-saving automated external defibrillators as well. The city chose today in part because February is Heart Month in Canada. Toronto paramedics responded to more than 2,000 cardiac arrest calls last year. Officials say that more lives could be saved if more people knew how to do CPR or use those automated defibrillators before paramedics arrived on scene.
It's wonderful for him, terrible for the Leafs.
Just knowing that he's from here, it's like, wow. And I feel like it's a great success story.
Well, he beat the Leafs on Saturday, but he's not getting any hate. Instead, David Ayers and his family are getting the celebrity treatment. I'll tell you about that after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Tomorrow is David Ayers Day, not here in Toronto, but in Raleigh, North Carolina. The NHL's most famous Zamboni driver turned hockey star will reunite with his Carolina Hurricanes teammates tomorrow night, while he continued to be the talk of the hockey world today. Natalie Nanowski has his story.
In your wildest dreams, you would never expect this to happen if you're the emergency goaltender.
It was an odd sight when David Ayers hit the ice, wearing a Hurricanes jersey with a Toronto helmet. Even the Carolina coach didn't expect much, but Ayers delivered, helping the Hurricanes beat the Leafs 6-3.
It's wonderful for him, terrible for the Leafs.
Just knowing that he's from here, it's like, wow. And I feel like it's a great success story.
What's the fan?
One Ayers is living up.
Yeah, it's been great.
When you first heard you were going,
He spent the day touring American morning shows. One even brought him to tears when they called his mom.
This has just made me so extremely proud. I have no words. I couldn't sleep for the first night. Last night I slept and I thought, okay, I knew your dad and I always said that you would get where you are today.
Come on, Mom.
It's amazing.
That night, his wife was in the stands, and when the Hurricanes' backup goalie went down, she knew her husband was up.
I think my biggest fear at that point was what the reception was going to be like. The fans are so diehard that it's crazy. So he stepped on the ice and there were an awful lot of cheers and I couldn't believe it.
At the end, his performance even scored him a standing ovation. Today, his kids are also feeling the fame.
There's a lot of people looking at me, like every class, people were like whispering about me, like, oh, her dad was a 42-year-old Zamboni driver. I was just like acting like I can't hear them. And yeah, everybody's staring at me, asking questions. Some people actually came up to me and told me about how I was famous and everything.
The Hurricanes are also selling an Ayers shirt, with proceeds going to a kidney foundation, since Ayers received a transplant from his mom more than a decade ago. Tomorrow, he's opening the Carolina game.
Well, I'm hoping that he'll ride the Zamboni as well. You know, you can't make this up. You know, this is just like the best story ever. And we are also proclaiming it David Ayers Day in Raleigh.
To top it all off, the stick that Ayers used is going to end up here at the Hockey Hall of Fame on display for everyone to see. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Toronto.
As for the boys in blue and white, they were actually in their St. Pat's greens this afternoon at practice. Today was also trade deadline day. Toronto not making any huge moves, but they did send goalie Michael Hutchinson to the Colorado Avalanche for former Marley player Callie Rosen. General Manager Kyle Dubas had this to say about the Buds' performance as of late.
The best way to put it is to use like a Jekyll and Hyde type of way to describe it. And I think it's up to our entire program, starting with me and on to Sheldon, on to the players to find our way out of it and be the best version of ourselves that we can every single day for our organization, for the fan base, and to get to where we want to go.
Toronto has some crucial games coming up, starting tomorrow when they take on the Tampa Bay Lightning in Florida. Nick Sernkovich is back with his extended forecast. You were talking about a special weather statement. There will be snow, won't there?
Yeah, there will. Unfortunately, special weather statement is usually not a good thing. In this case, we're talking about snowfall. Well, it's good if you like the snow, but it is going to make for pretty messy winter conditions over the next couple of days. It starts tomorrow night and then lasts into about Thursday. So that's associated with the major winter storm. There is a bit of a mixed bag of precipitation in there, and then in behind it, we get slapped with some cold air as well. So let's talk about the timing of this. Tonight, we're still looking at some light, wet sort of snow flurries across the GTA. It might slick up the roads a bit for tomorrow morning, but I don't think we're going to see anything accumulating. It's not till tomorrow night where the second round of this system moves in, and as it does, we'll see snowfall starting in the GTA. Possibility of some mixed precipitation in there. By the morning hours, we'll see about 6-7 centimeters of snow on the ground. Continues through the day on Wednesday. The question is, do we get into some of that warm air where we see some mixed rainfall in there Wednesday afternoon? That is still uncertain at this point. And then in behind it, we've got cold, windy air moving in behind. Okay, so for tomorrow, there's a look at what you could see on the ground in the morning. Not too much. Then as we head through tomorrow afternoon, or rather Wednesday afternoon, we're looking at upwards to about 10 plus centimeters of snow and tapering off by Thursday, closer to 15 centimeters of snow. Southwestern Ontario tonight, temperatures at about 2 degrees with the mixed precipitation. 5-6 degrees for tomorrow. As we move through the Golden Horseshoe, we're looking at temperatures again around that freezing mark. Few wet flurries for the morning commute tomorrow afternoon, 4 degrees with some cloud cover, and that's when we usher in our new system. So long-range forecast looks like this: 4 for tomorrow, 2 on Wednesday. This is really where our storm system moves in. Temperatures drop toward the end of the week. It'll be cold, it'll be windy, and it will be snowy as well. Mike.
It will be winter. Thanks, Nick. Well, cats are back on the big screen. No, not the Andrew Lloyd Webber video, but a new movie featuring nothing but internet cat videos. I'll tell you where you can catch it, all for a good cause, after the break. Are you the kind of person who can spend all day sitting around the house watching funny cat videos online? Well, it's your chance to actually leave the house to sit around and watch funny cat videos on the big screen. This is the trailer for Cat Video Fest 2020. It started as a curated collection of cat videos that nonprofit organizations would screen as a fundraiser. This year, it's actually being distributed at rep theaters across North America, with a portion of ticket sales going to local humane societies. If you missed it this weekend at the Hot Docs Theater, there are screenings coming up in Hamilton and Waterloo. That's our newscast for tonight. Thanks for watching. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Good night.